Hello, I'm Stephen Ferguson, and I work in the GPO in Dublin. And my job there is to look after the historical collections that the Post Office has formed over many years. One of the nicest items that we have is this particular postbox, which is now in Galway Museum. The story of postboxes is very interesting because they were introduced in the middle of the 19th century as a way for the postman to collect letters in one place. So if you wanted to post a letter to your friend or to your mother or to your cousin, you before would have had to bring it to a local post office or give it to a postman. But once the idea of setting up a solid box like this came in, it was very popular and people were able to go to one particular place in Galway. This particular box used to stand at the junction of High Street and Mainguard Street in the city centre. And everybody knew it was there and they could post their letters. So it was a very clever idea. There were different styles of post boxes from about 1855. The earliest one in Ireland was from 1855, and it's a unique one that we gave to the National Museum some years ago. And there were lots of different designs. Some of them very successful, some of them not so nice. And the Post Office decided that it wanted to have a new type of design. And they asked an English architect called J.W. Penfold if he could come up with an attractive design for a new type of pillar box like this one. And he thought about it, and he was inspired by a classical idea. He knew there was a little temple in Athens, and the top of that temple had 6 sides, just like this postbox does. And he designed a hexagonal or 6-sided postbox, which could be used for collecting letters. Because of his work on it, this type of postbox to this day is known as a Penfold letterbox. Looking at the bottom of this postbox, you will see the name Cochrane. That is the name of the firm in England that made these postboxes. The business of Cochrane was well known in the 19th century as an engineering and iron foundry business. And they made a lot of railways and bridges. But they also won the contract for making letterboxes for the post office. So on a lot of the early letterboxes that some of them are still in use in Ireland and in England, you will see the name Cochrane of the town of Dudley in Worcestershire in England. So it's a name to remember in connection with postboxes. If you look at it closely, we can look at some of the details on it that make it a very special type of box. At the very top, you can see the 6 sides of the letterbox going around, and you can see the little decorative balls on each side. The postbox came in 3 different sizes, and if you are lucky enough to see another one of these, there's one in County Wicklow, there's one in County Cork in Skibbereen, and there's one in Wexford in New Ross. You'll be able to count the little balls at the top. And some of them have 7 and some of them have 8 on each side. And that'll tell you you're looking at a slightly different size of letterbox. The top of it, which you may be able to see, is decorated with a type of plant. It's called an acanthus plant. And the very top of it has these acanthus leaves. And the very, very top had an acanthus bud on the top. Now this very often got broken. It fell off or somebody hit it. And this particular one has lost its acanthus bud. And it was replaced with a little ball, which is very like what was there, but it's not the original little bulb that was there. They put on this little sign here. If you look closely, you'll see 2 letters there. There is a V and there is a very swirly curved R. And those 2 letters stand for the Queen at the time, Queen Victoria, And the R is for the Latin word regina, which means queen. So it's just letting people know that this was her box. The post office was part of her responsibilities, and it was called the Royal Mail. And still in England today, it's still called the Royal Mail. Up at the top here, there is something else that is missing on this box. These letterboxes had a special design of the royal family. There was a royal crest which went up there, and the English royal crest always had a lion and a unicorn and a crown in the middle. In Ireland, not everybody liked having a sign of English royalty on their letterboxes. And at some stage in the past, the post office scratched off the sign of the crown. But again, if you look very closely, you can just see a little bit of the outline of where that particular royal crest was. Underneath where the royal crest was, we have the little opening for posting your letters. And on the earliest type of this box, there was a special little flap that hung down here to close out the rain. And it had the word letters written on it. This box doesn't have that anymore, but the earliest ones had their own little letters. And it was supposed to protect the letters from the rain. This one, if you can feel it, has a little upward slope. So you pushed in your letter and then it fell down into the inside of the box. And if we open the door, we can see inside where the letters went. So the letter fell down into this little cage, or in some boxes there was a postman's sack, which was put in place neatly, and all the letters were there. And then he could collect them, open up the door, and take them away in another bag for delivery. But there was occasionally a problem with this box. Because of its six-sided design, sometimes some letters got stuck in the corners with other ones, and there were complaints from the public that some of their letters hadn't been delivered. And the post office decided in 1879 that they would have to come up with another new design. So this design was introduced in 1866, and it ran for 13 years until 1879. And then the post office had a new type of pillar box. And that's the one that you may still see in a lot of towns around Ireland, a completely round, cylindrical pillar box. And it was easier for the letters not to get stuck in any little corners or angles of the post box. And that's the type that we've had up until the recent generation. Today's boxes are a different style. They're not quite as attractive as these ones. They're functional, but they don't have the beautiful elegance of this. One other bit to tell you about. This little piece here. Inside this, there was a notice. It was originally of enamel plate, and written on it were the times that the postman would come and collect the post. And long ago, there were up to 5 or 6 different times when the postman would come and collect the letters, because letters were a lot more important than they are today. So you could look at this and say the next collection for my letter will be 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the evening, and you would know that it would be collected and sent on its way for delivery. So all in all, this is one of the most attractive and functional objects that there is in Galway Museum today. And it's a reminder for everybody of how important the post office was and how important it was for people to communicate. Today we maybe have different ways of communicating, but the humble letter is still used. And if you want to send a special message to somebody, write it on a postcard or in a letter, put a stamp on it, and find a nice post box to post it in.